Start. There we go. I didn't really need. I don't think I used that recording last week. But okay, guys, welcome back. Welcome back to the podcast. So this is bonus episode 5 of The Last Dance. This is obviously an automotive podcast, but sports is actually my first love. So we're joined by JR. JR's in Grand Rapids. He and I go
What
back
up?
years. This is your first week on the show. Brian's back for his fifth week in a row, and Ben is back after taking a week off for not paying attention. So one of the things I want to go over is from the previous show, which is episodes, 7 and 8, because we've heard a lot about Michael Jordan being a bully, and players have come out, and it still seems like they're not really saying it, but we live in the world of public perception, the court of public opinion, and one of the things that's bothered me all week since last week, and I don't know how people keep missing this. I get the Scottie Burrell stuff to a certain extent. But they say, look at Jordan. He picks on everybody except for, the big guys on the team. He doesn't pick on Scottie. Doesn't pick on Dennis. Didn't pick on any of those guys from back in the day. Obviously, what's his face? I don't know why I'm drawing a blank, but you guys know what I'm saying. But then I never saw anywhere where we actually picked on Steve Kerr. They were having a hard practice. Phil Jackson was calling ticky-tack fouls. Jordan got extremely frustrated. He fouled the shit out of Kerr, which probably wasn't necessary. And then Kerr, in retaliation, said, I'm not going to sit back and take that. He punches Jordan first. Jordan punches him in the eye. So that thing was just a practice scuffle that has absolutely nothing to do with bullying. So that's just one of the things that's been bothering me all week. It's just nobody's coming out and saying that. And to me, it's like front and center. That absolutely has nothing to do with bullying. So that's one of the things that I wanted to get out of the way before we move on to this week. So episode 9 starts early 90s, MJ versus Reggie Miller. And we've seen this fight clip. God, some of us has probably seen it hundreds. Actually, everybody on this call has probably seen it hundreds and hundreds of times. It's in every highlight, every clip that you see of Jordan going through the playoffs. In seeing that, what did you guys think about them going back to the first time that they met, and then fast forwarding to the 1998 playoffs, and especially kind of highlighting Reggie Miller? Like, what are your guys' thoughts? We'll start with Brian.
Reggie Miller was always one of my favorite guys to watch back then. Probably in my lifetime and during my childhood, he was probably the best three-point shooter that I had ever seen at a young age. And you could see that when he came into the league, and it was just like contrasting, in his younger years and then going back to the 98 Eastern Conference Finals. It just showed you that he always was up for the challenge. And that just was kind of a constant because Jordan had those Eastern Conference foes all those years. If it wasn't Reggie Miller and the Pacers, it was the New York Knicks. So it just showed, what a great matchup those two teams had over the years.
Ben, what do you got?
Well, growing up as a Pistons fan, I always hated Reggie Miller. I hated the Pacers. They never beat the Pistons, and I'll never let them forget that. And I even hated their uniforms. I hated everyone on that team. I hate Rick Smith. He should not be allowed to block Michael Jordan's shot. Did you see that clip? I can't believe they showed that clip. It showed like Reggie's competitive nature. Like he had total confidence. He was an assassin. Like you had to respect that. But he was the same as everybody else that they interviewed that played Jordan. Everybody thought that they were good enough. Everybody thought we can do it. And Jordan just found motivation in anything. He would find any type of motive. From Karl Malone winning the MVP. I know I'm getting off topic here, but
well, not yet, but you're starting to scope creep a little.
Yeah. But Reggie was just another victim. That's the way I look at it.
What you got, JR?
Reggie Miller he's a clutch dude. I always said, like, if I wasn't a Bulls fan, I probably would be a Pacers fan because of Reggie Miller. Like you said, he's an assassin. He's just so clutch. One of those guys that just gets hot. The more he makes, the more confident he is, and he just gets going. Ever since that one series from the Knicks, was it like how many seconds where he's doing the choke to Spike Lee? I love that.
Yeah, what was that? Wasn't that like 12 points in 15 seconds or something crazy like that?
Ridiculous.
Yeah, something like that. Something crazy.
One of the most craziest sequences ever. And I have a lot of respect for Reggie Miller. It's just unfortunate for him to be in the Eastern against our beloved Chicago Bulls.
I don't think that I don't remember disliking Reggie Miller that much. But being a diehard Bulls fan, I think that he wasn't my favorite. But I know that that Pacers teams was fantastic. One of the things I really loved about them kind of going back to the beginning, then fast forwarding, is you saw that at some point during that era or that block of time, those 5 years or so, there was a lot of respect there between those guys. And one thing I think I've learned about Jordan in this documentary is when you're on the practice court, when it's game time, you get Michael Jordan A. Outside of that, you get Michael Jordan B. And I thought it was really cool to see Reggie Miller and Michael dressed to the nines, and Reggie walks by and, hey, good game, man. Hey, it's going to be a fight. It's going to be a fight, after game two. And one thing about Reggie is he's as good of a shooter, pure shooter as they've ever seen in the NBA. And in his heyday, once he gets streaky, I mean, he's like I said, he's Klay Thompson. He's Steph Curry. I mean, the league's been loaded with assassins, but I think what made Reggie Miller different is that he was more than just a 3-point shooter. Because you had Craig Hodges, you had a ton of specialists, but he was more than a specialist. He was a leader of that very, very, very stacked team. And I think we got to give that team a lot of credit because they went down that roster. You got Mark Jackson, Jalen Rose, Rick Smits, the Davis brothers. They were blocking everything. And
Yeah,
that was a fantastic team coached by Larry Bird. One of the things that kept standing out for me during this whole documentary, and we saw it here, is, man, back in the day, those guys used to dress to the nines. I mean, those suits would be pressed. There was a story, and I don't remember, was it in this documentary? Maybe it was on a podcast I watched, where Jordan was getting dressed before the game, and he put on his cufflinks and he did all his stuff because he was at the hotel. Tim Grover, someone was talking about, and they said that they had asked him, Jordan, why are you getting all dressed up? Because the stadium was literally across the street, and Jordan's response was, "This may be the first time somebody over there ever gets to see me, so I want to show them, that I'm at my best at all times." I think that kind of speaks to some of the stuff that we've learned about him and that attitude. Talking about dressing though, what do you guys think? Comparing then how everyone used to dress for, like, they're going to a business meeting, like,
I love that. I love it when
and
they
now they
would
yeah yeah now they come in and they're just sweatpants out. I mean, it's a thing. It's just coming in comfortable. You don't have to, you can just switch clothes, or you're dressed like Russell Westbrook. You know what I mean?
ridiculous, man. I mean, I know he's trying to make a fashion statement, but some of
You know,
it's just it's
if I
out
may
there.
say, you actually bring up a really good
Thank-
point because Jordan was always dressed so well, but he also, the Jordan brand has been the big trend in this athleisure trend where people are just casual everywhere they go now. People, if you wear a suit, they don't wear the tie. You wear sneakers with the suit now. And that's even if you wear a coat. Like casual is the new dress up.
Yeah, my take on it is that it was all business for that generation of players. If you look at the line of Jordans too, if you think about it, a lot of his shoes look like they were modeled after dress shoes. Like you've got the patent leather on the Jordan 11s, and then a couple of years after that, they actually had the spats that went on top of the shoe, on top of the waist.
Oh yeah, I had those.
Those
Yeah,
are
I forgot
hideous.
about those.
yeah, and
Yeah,
so
let's continue
I,
to forget about those.
yeah, and so they weren't the best looking ones, right? But I think that it was a lot of input that came from Jordan, I would imagine, that said, "Hey, make these look like they're business like, but also make it functional so that players who wear them, will feel comfortable and will feel like they can perform." But I think it all had to do with his image and just being all about business.
So we'll let Jr. lead on this next one. So Brian had brought this up in a past episode about Steve Kerr. And one thing I said about you earlier on another call, Brian, is being here in Arizona. I know you're not from here, but you do your homework on everybody who's Filipino or in Arizona or Seattle or
Right,
just baseball in general. And
right,
so you
right.
know these things that, it wasn't necessarily common knowledge, but maybe back then it was. Steve Kerr's father, the Steve Kerr story. I mean, what did you guys think about that? Did you love it? Did you feel like maybe it didn't belong in the docu-series? Jared, like, what are your thoughts about Steve Kerr and his
I
story?
I I liked it. I like that background on Steve Kerr. I never knew that story. If you think about it, both Steve and Michael's father were both shot to death. So it was like there's that relation there. So I was fine with that little touch on the background of Steve. In fact, I was hoping for more of that with other players.
Well, I liked it a
Ben, what
lot.
are your
I did not
thoughts?
know that story. I didn't really know anything about it at all. Um, and then when you see what happened, and uh, it's just ultra sad. Really, the only thing you can say, it's just an ultra sad story. And but you can see how cerebral Steve Kerr is. You know, you can tell by the way he grew up. His dad is a diplomat or whatever he was, government official. His mom was a professor, I believe.
He was like a president of the
Yeah,
college and like
and
leading
you
the
can see
whole.
why a guy, you know, as
Yeah.
far as he is, remember him, he was talking about how he was watching John Paxson because he played against Paxson and the Bulls and Jordan when he played on Cleveland. And he knew the team well. So when he got on the team, he was like, I'm going to be that John Paxson, you know, and he already knew. And you can see why now he's such a great coach. He's one of the best coaches in the NBA now. And that there's no discussion. It's really good insight into his intellect.
Yeah, Brian.
Yeah, I love seeing the piece on him. And I too wish that we had a little bit more background about him. So I'm glad they touched on it in these last couple episodes. But in Arizona, Steve Kerr is kind of a quietly beloved figure. Going to school down in Tucson at that one other school. See, I went to ASU, so you know that one other school,
It's the
whatever.
other school for you. I get it.
The other school down south. But yeah, his numbers in the rafters. And a lot of people forget he was also, well, first, I didn't know he was drafted by the Phoenix Suns. He was either he was drafted or he got his, an undrafted free agent signing or whatever. They covered it yesterday. So I didn't know that piece. But a lot of people forget that after his playing days, he was actually the GM of the Suns for a little while. And so
Oh
he was
yeah.
here during the time of the Steve Nash and Mark Stoudemire,
I, I, I
Sean
believe he
Marion, Joe
was the
Johnson
GM
years.
that
So he
got
was
Shaq
here.
onto the Suns, wasn't he?
I think so, yeah, when
Yeah,
he traded Sean Marion and Marcus Banks over to Miami.
the
Yeah,
Shaq,
that was,
Shactus.
yeah, the Shaq yeah, the Shaq
the big sunset.
but yeah, yeah, right. Um,
Oh,
what's funny is though is that just kind of a side story. Like I personally was so excited that Shaq was here that I actually have a Phoenix Suns Shaquille O'Neal jersey. So I've got that hanging in the closet. But it was great to see that piece on Steve Kerr though, because like I said, he is a beloved figure here in Arizona, and of course you see the success that he has now, with the Golden State Warriors. So it's really nice to see a little bit more inside information about him because you can tell that he's not somebody who talks about himself. He's always about the players that he coaches and around, and always is about his teammates.
Yeah, for me, I love that, and I was looking forward to it. And Brian, as soon as they brought it up, I texted you. I was like, "Yes,
Yeah,
there's your Kerr story. There's your Kerr
yeah.
story."
Been
I
talking
loved
about
it.
this
I
like the
mean,
first
he's such a
episode. Yeah,
high IQ guy. You knew he was great. And he's played a pivotal role as a spot shooter, as a be ready air quotes guy for this team. And as soon as they showed that, they went back to 1998 in the playoffs. And I mean, poor Scottie Pippen. Once they show him going to the line 2 for 5 and finishes 2 for 7, and then they start showing Kerr highlights off that tip to what from Rick Schmitz to Pippen to Kerr.
yeah,
At that pivotal shot, it was amazing. And then him telling the story, Jordan telling him to be ready, and how like a little kid he was about it.
yeah.
Jordan's all like, he's like, yeah, yeah, hey, I'll be open, I'll be open. I
What was even
laughed.
better was his speech at the victory parade when he
oh,
was
Yeah.
telling,
classic.
the crowd, yeah, his side of the
So
story,
good.
which was hilarious.
Yeah, I thought that was amazing, and I'm glad they did it. And I'll get back to kind of what you were saying earlier, Jr. Near the end of this podcast. So the pizza, does it all make sense to anybody? Did you do your research after? I mean, I watched SVP. I watched Jalen and Jacoby interview the director. Some of the questions that I had started to fall in place. Some of the answers were starting to make a little bit more sense. But first person to shake their head no was Ben. So Ben, why don't you start us off? Like, what are your
So
thoughts of the
you
pizza
hear
game?
talk about it like they didn't know that he was going to order the pizza. He was saying they were calling every place in town, like Salt Lake City is a dead town, fries, and you can't get any late night food. And so it just falls upon this pizza place. Holy shit, we got Michael Jordan's pizza order. What do we do? You know, and so they do it, and then 5 people deliver it, or do they just instantly decide right there, we're going to poison this pizza? Like it just like
How did they know that?
Hold on, Jared. Hold on,
I
hold on,
mean,
hold on.
I don't believe there's got to be something else to the story that we're missing because I can't connect the dots there.
There is stuff that you were missing. Okay, go ahead, JR.
How did they know it was Michael Jordan for Michael Jordan though?
Is that your contribution?
No, I'm just asking. Like, what?
That's a valid question, man.
My contribution is that I'm not sold that that it was poisoned.
Yeah.
I'm not sold. And
Do you think it was? What do you think it was? The whole flu game. If not, I mean, was it the pizza still? Like, or was it hangover? Or
I think it was the pizza, but I don't think someone intentionally was like, yeah, we're gonna take him out for this game. We're gonna win. No, I'm not buying that. There may have been some bad sausage on there. I don't know. Whatever he eats,
yeah,
not buying it.
Brian, what do you got?
Yeah. So I think it was funny though, just everybody's thinking that he had the flu, and then all of a sudden his story is pizza. I just laughed at that when I watched it last night. But Jay, you and I texted about it this morning, and so I listened to the Jalen Jacoby podcast, and the full story is pretty funny, but it makes sense. I do buy into the fact that yes, it was the pizza that caused the sickness the next day, since their story is that I guess everybody else had gone out to dinner already earlier that night. MJ had a later night. He didn't get to order any food before everything closed up. And so when everybody was in his room, he was like, just somebody order me a pizza. And then when it comes, I guess the story is that he didn't want anybody else to have any. So he spat on the whole pizza so that nobody would have none. And he ate the whole thing. Right? I don't think that somebody like poisoned it or spiked it. I don't think so. I just think that he either overate or there was something bad in the pizza. And so I do believe the fact that something was bothering him the next day during the flu game, because you'd never seen Michael Jordan like doubled over or even show that he's sick or just not well during a game. So why would he start then? And I don't buy the fact that it would have been a hangover either, because why would Michael Jordan go out and party and get crazy stupid drunk and then show up to the next game? That's something that Dennis Rodman would do, but still grab like 15 boards, right? But I think it was just bad pizza.
Yeah. With that story, a lot of it made sense because everybody's like, "What?" Like, I think universally, everyone screamed out, "Pizza!" When they announced it, because for 20 something years, or is it 30? I don't even know the math. What's the math? For a long time, we're thinking it's a flu game. I dug out my flu game Jordans, and now it's the pizza game. But like you were saying, Jr. So the director kind of explained the setup, and yeah, Ben, things were missing. So his explanation was their hotel was way outside of Salt Lake City. So everything was shut down early. I don't know if you've ever been to Salt Lake. It's a very conservative place. But downtown, they still have some stuff going on. But outside of downtown, it's like being outside of Phoenix, being outside of Tucson. It's like being outside of Grand Rapids. Like
That was a missed marketing opportunity by Little Caesars, because even though he ate bad pizza, got food poisoning, he was still hot and ready.
Nice.
But here's the deal, though, is Michael was mad because the guys ate without him. And that's why he ordered the pizza. And of course, stories he spat on it. So how do you explain 5 guys showing up to the door? Well, the explanation makes sense too. That the bellhop, like everybody knows where teams stay, like the hotels. Like I remember when we would go to the Mavericks games, when the other teams were coming to town, the Miami Heat, the Chicago Bulls, everybody stayed at the Anatole Hotel. And so, if you wait for the bus after the game, you follow the bus to the hotel, there's always people there. In this case, they're out in the middle of nowhere, but I'm pretty sure like the guy or girl up front was probably like, "Hey, the Bulls are staying here." I don't think they knew it was Michael Jordan, but I think they called their buddies, and their buddies all showed up because the story is they were looking in the room trying to get a glimpse to see who was in there. So they didn't know it was Michael. That's my assumption based on what I heard. And I think it was just random. Like sometimes you can just
Come on,
have
man.
bad pizza. Like I've had bad pizza before. I used to order Domino's all the time, and one day I had it to get those little upper deck baseball cards. Remember those? I used to order those all the time, and I got sick and just threw up all over the place. You kind of know a bite or two into your food, either if it just doesn't taste right, but you keep eating it anyway because it's not
We
spoiled,
already
and then you
know
end up
that
paying for
black
it.
people are lactose intolerant. You can't eat a whole cheese pizza. You're gonna get sick.
Hey, hey, Asian people, man. But I'll sit and eat a whole pizza anyway. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, and the story of him spitting on the food, that's kind of one of those things I heard on another podcast about him being in a production trailer, I think for Space Jam or something too, and they would bring him cinnamon rolls every morning, and in order to stop people from eating, he would spit on the cinnamon rolls, like, "Nobody take my shit." So, I mean, it's a nasty habit, it's disgusting, it's like, "What the hell?" But if he's the one eating it, I mean, it's gross, but that's not the first time I've heard that story, which makes it more believable this time around. In 5 minutes or less, so taking the last shot, this came up on another one of my calls by the pro LeBron guys, and one of the things they say is Jordan gets credit for making the right play when he passes to somebody who's wide open, but LeBron gets criticized for passing the ball at crunch time. And I think if you think about it, at first you're like, "Yeah, that's right. That's not fair." But if you really think about it, I think there's a big, major difference. You guys think you can answer that in 5 minutes or less? JR.
With LeBron, I don't know, man. I'm so anti-LeBron. I'm just so biased with Jordan. I know I'm going to just talk shit about him, but
Why are you anti LeBron?
I think it stems from the whole decision. I was at a sports bar waiting him to say he's going to Chicago, and he said, "I'm taking my talents to South Beach," and I walked right out that thing, man. My full Bulls thing, the girls' day at the time, and I said, "Let's go." Cashed out and didn't even want to listen to rap. As soon as it left his mouth, taking my talents to South Beach, I was gone. He's just, I'm sorry, I don't want to get started. I'm a hater. I'm a hater.
That's all right. That's all right. Hey, Ben. I
He's,
mean,
I respect. He's one of the greatest basketball players, but
sure.
he's not the goat.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't want to turn this to a LeBron, Michael debate, but Brian, 3 minutes and 53 seconds before we have to transition to the call.
Yeah. I can see the angle being this is that like Michael makes the right play when he passes it off because he knows he's going to draw the double or the triple team. And so kicks it out to one of his shooters, right? And you also know that he has the supreme confidence to take that shot, win or lose. I don't know if you can really say the same about LeBron because people kind of knocked him on, well, he passes a lot more often than he shoots. Does that mean he's not confident in his final shot? So that's the angle that I'm taking with that is that I think there's an expectation that LeBron should be taking more shots down in crunch time, but he's passing the ball off. So it kind of gives off the impression that he doesn't want the shot. I think that's what he had hanging over him for a very long time.
Ben, you have
Yeah, I
an
mean,
opinion on
people
that?
talk about, LeBron's not clutch or whatever. LeBron can't shoot. He's not a good shooter. So he's going to miss most of his shots anyway. So in the clutch and he misses a shot, you remember it. And then he passes it to one of his crappy teammates and they miss it and he can't win either way. And then everyone's pointing the finger at him like, look, you suck. Everybody, you all suck. But that's the Cleveland Cavaliers, you know.
No, I think there's a lot of truth to that, and that's kind of what the result that I came to is that LeBron's the eye test, right? He's always shied away from being aggressive. I mean, that guy is so big. And one of the things that frustrated me the most as a Miami Heat fan is not just that he couldn't post up JJ Barea or Jason Terry, but that every time they'd pass the ball down to him, he'd pass the ball away like immediately. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing? I always say that he always did fadeaway layups. Like that's not even a thing until LeBron started playing. He'll go right to left and he won't go strong. He'll like kind of like fade away and kind of throw the ball up. That's what he did for most of his, career up until, maybe his return to Cleveland and his second or third year in Miami. And I think that's the biggest difference is like Brian was saying, and they said it in this show, Jordan never thought about missing a shot that he hadn't taken yet. So he was never afraid to take the shot. And one thing he had to learn was to give the ball up. And when the person you pass the ball to makes the shot, it's always the correct play. Brian, this is going to be painful for you, but goal line stand Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You know, that's a great play if they convert on that quick slant.
Right.
It's a terrible call if it gets picked off. You know, I mean, we always play the result.
And it's even more terrible when you have Marshawn Lynch in the backfield ready to bust it in.
Yeah, and I mean, in the advanced statistics, the advanced statistics show that he's been unsuccessful at that all season. So I understand the call, and I think that's the problem that's happening with LeBron is that he misses those shots when he takes them. His people miss them when he passes them sometimes, but then he's never been the guy to kind of go in aggressive and take that shot. And I don't think it's a double standard. I think it's one guy has a resume and one guy has yet to prove it. Now you are whatever your history says you are. So
I
let's
think he lacks that killer instinct, man.
that's
I
the
don't
thing.
think
We'll talk about that. Let's break and then come right back.
All right.